for the opportunity. Thank you for the invitation to be one of the speakers on this all-important webinar of the international webinar on Earth Science and Climate Change. So, like the introduction said, I will be presenting on understanding the science of climate change and revealing the challenges and opportunities it presents. And so my name is Spencer S. Taylor Jr. I am the Director of Climate Change and Environment at the Ministry of Transport in Liberia. So as we may all be aware, our Earth planet is the only planet that supports life. But presently, its existence is under serious threat. Okay, for most of ancient history, the concentration of our carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere has been bouncing between 180 and 300 parts per million. But just over 10,000 years, this has increased up to 420 parts per million. And we are going to show that it is the activities of human that is responsible for this change. And as we are aware, as the concentration of carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere, it affects our climate system, it affects livelihood and other activities carried on here on Earth. So let's look at our climate system. We know that our climate system is an interconnected complex dynamics that comprises the atmosphere, the ocean, the ice, snow covered, and the land surfaces, and the many interactions that occur within them. So now we are going to take a look at the natural climate change and the anthropogenic climate change. Yes, we agree that our climate has been changing over the years, over time, but the rate at which it is changing currently is alarming. All right, and this change is attributed hugely to human activities. So this graph here shows that the natural drivers show that our climate has been changing, but it has not changed to cause the increase of temperature to go above 1 degree Celsius. But with the interventions of humans and with the emissions from humans' activities, we are seeing that our climate and the temperature has increased. And these changes has been observed by NASA scientists as well as other scientists from reputable institutions. And they have recorded that the warmest years on record have happened between in the last 20 years. So how do we know that our climate is changing? What are the indicators that show that our climate is changing? So there is unequivocal evidence that our climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. So these multiple lines of evidence show that the rate of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is increasing or has increased. All right, our global temperature is also increasing. Our major ice sheets, all right, are massively declining, and sea level rise and ocean warming has also increased. So let's look at carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. So we see that the highest historical CO2 emissions has never passed 300 parts per million. Okay, but but by 2022, we find out that we have close to 420 parts per million. All right, so before human civilization, most of our climate changes were attributed to just very small variations in the Earth's orbit. But now we have the combined effect of human activities that is attributed to increasing the impact in the atmosphere. And about 25 to 30% of the CO2 emissions in the atmosphere that has been absorbed by the ocean, which leads to ocean acidification and 20 to 25% have been absorbed by vegetation. So another indicator there is the global mean surface temperature, which shows that. So we look at the graph here on the left. It shows that all of the models shows that our temperature has been increasing since the 1850s up to 2024. This shows that our temperature has been increasing. Okay, and all of the models point in the same direction. So our global average surface temperature in 2020 is has been tied with that of the 2016 highest year on record. All right, and the last and in the last 5 years from 2019 up to present has been recorded as the warmest year ever on record. So another indicator that points that our climate is changing is the sea level rise. All right, so sea level has been rising because of human-induced global warming. So in recent years, the rate at which our sea level has risen is very unprecedented, okay, compared to the past 2,500 years. So in the last 27 years, our sea level has risen with more than 103, which is plus or minus 4 millimeters, okay, and this was recorded, the highest was recorded in the year 2022 in August. So another indicator that points to the fact that our climate has changed, or our climate is changing, is the ocean acidification. So we understand that about 30%, all right, of the ocean acidity has been observed, okay, and our ocean has absorbed 7.2 to 10.8 billion metric tons of CO2 every year. Like I said in the previous slide, like I showed in the previous slide, about 20 to 30% of CO2 emissions are absorbed by the ocean. So as the ocean absorbs emissions, it decreases the pH level and increases ocean acidification. So another indicator is that points to that our climate is changing is the decrease and major decline of our major ice sheet, the ice sheet extent. Okay, so between 1979 to current, we have observed that our major ice sheets in the Atlantic, the Arctic, and Greenland have rapidly decreased. Okay, and by then, year before last, September 2020, we've shown that about 3.92 million of kilometers square of our major ice sheet has declined, and that is due to reduced surface albedo and faster global warming. So this points to the manifestation of extreme events. Okay, so we've been experiencing extreme events in the past years, but of recent, those extreme events has increased in intensity as well as in frequency. Okay, so these are some of the major climate anomalies and events that we have observed in 2022. So in 2022, we saw that Europe was saw the second highest highest temperature on record. The Arctic sea extent has maximally decreased. North America observed the 15th warmest year on record. Okay, and we in 2022 as well, we also felt the Hurricane Agatha, okay, in Mexico, in the Mexico Pacific coast, and many more. So this is just some of, okay, the major climate anomalies and events that were recorded in 2022. So most of us we felt these events. We know that now we know that our climate is changing, but what is the cause? Do we understand the signs, all right, that our climate is actually changing? Do we understand what is responsible for climate change? So I'm going to present here the greenhouse gas effect. So the greenhouse gas effect is mainly the effect and the phenomenon that is responsible for the changes in our climate. So this is a phenomenon where uh, the Earth atmosphere traps the sun's energy and not giving it up back to the upward atmosphere. So um, so this extra energy that has been absorbed around the Earth's space, around the Earth's atmosphere, it warms the Earth, all right, and affects most of all of the other components, okay, in the Earth's atmosphere. So here we have the natural greenhouse gas effect as well as the human-induced greenhouse gas effect. We understand that greenhouse gases are very important to human existence, all right? Because without them, our temperature, our Earth's average temperature would have been minus 18 degrees Celsius rather than 15 degrees. And there our Earth would have been an icy wasteland. But with the presence of excess GHG concentration in the atmosphere, this has caused our atmosphere to trap more and more heat, causing causing serious changes in our atmosphere. So what are the gases that are responsible for trapping the sun's heat? So the major gas that is responsible for that is carbon dioxide. Okay, the presence of carbon dioxide and the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is so huge, is so enormous, okay, that then methane, then nitrous oxide, then carbon, then chlorofluorocarbon, then the HCFC, then sulfur oxyfluoride. So all of these gases are there concentrated in the atmosphere, but the concentration of carbon dioxide is huge. And the sources of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is attributed to the burning of fossil fuel and the combustion okay, of fossil fuel, as well as the production comes from the production of cement. And methane is also one of the gases whose concentration is high, as well as its global warming potential. So the global warming potential of methane in the atmosphere is 21 times more than carbon dioxide. All right, but its concentration is not much more compared to that of CO2. And then nitrous oxide as well has a global warming potential of 310, okay, which is more than carbon dioxide and methane. And we just skip onto sulfur hexafluoride, whose concentration in the atmosphere is very low, but its global warming potential is way far more than the others, meaning that if you have a very little of these gases in the atmosphere, and if they trap the sun's energy, they are going to heat up the planet even hugely. So which sectors are the principal emitters and which activities are the principal emitters of CO2? So as we see here, we see that the energy sector is the major contributor to climate change. And the energy sector contributes 73.2%, all right, of our major greenhouse gas emissions, okay? And it is mainly the transport sector, it is mainly the industry, the road transport sector, aviation, commercial activities, and residential buildings that are responsible for the most part, all right, of our emissions. So here we will look at the greenhouse gas emissions share by country and region. So this clearly shows that the Annex 1 countries, or the richer countries are the ones who are mostly responsible for most of our emissions, most of the impact of climate change that we feel today. Okay, from the chart below, we see that countries like the United States, China, and Russia has made early transition to heavily used fossil fuel-based economic system. and these have contributed a whole lot to the climate impact that we have seen around the world today. So we are going to take some keen looks of at some of the impacts of climate change on major sectors. As we understand that climate change has a wide range of impact on almost all of the sectors. Here, we are showing that climate change has a greater impact on least developed and developing countries. Okay, and most of those countries happen to be found in West Africa, and least in West Africa. So here, the impacts of climate change mainly on agricultural losses, okay, is estimated between 2 to 4% loss of West Africa's GDP. So the diagram here on the left shows that most of the countries in Africa, especially West Africa, South America, and maybe some part of the Southern Europe, the agricultural productivity there is going to be low, as the projection predicts for agricultural use. So climate change is also having a tremendous and huge impact on human health. All right, it is predicted that between 2030 to 2050, climate change is expected to cause approximately 250,000 additional deaths from malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat waves. Okay, currently we have 3.5 million premature deaths in 2017 from emissions, which result into ischemic heart disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, lung cancer, lower respiratory infections, and diabetes. So the direct cost damage of climate change to health is estimated to be between 2 to 4 billion by the year 2030. And climate change, transport, as we all know, is a major contributor to climate change. But on the other hand, the developmental prospects of and the infrastructure of the transport systems are hugely vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And so increased temperature is going to have its long-lasting effects on transport modes and infrastructure, like the deformation of rails and tracks, like the thermal expansion of piers, and increased precipitation as well is going to have its medium and long-term impacts on on transport mode infrastructure. Extreme winds is going to have its own impact. Major sea level rise and sea storm surges are going to have their impact, as well as thawing permafrost. So the adverse impact of climate change and weather events in Africa are expected to have an average reduction in GDP of 20% by 2050 and 64% by 2021, and the road maintenance costs reaching as far as 270% if no action is taken. And on the coastal zone as well, climate change impact is going to be huge. Okay, and as we see in the table here, we're going to have climate change impact ranging from high sea levels, from high sea temperature, the changes in precipitation patterns, change in ocean conditions, the changes in storm tracks. They are going to have a grave effect, all right, on the biophysical effects of our coastal environment, on the socioeconomic. You're going to have socioeconomic impacts. They are going to have secondary accelerated impacts on sea level rise. They are also going to have an impact on the infrastructure and economic activities of those coastal zones and coastal inhabitants, all right, around the coastal areas. So we are going to take a look at the various potential future impacts of climate change. We understand that if temperature increases by just 1 degree, it's going to have a very major impact, okay, on a very major impact and magnitude on our climate system, and in turn, this is going to have a big impact on our livelihood. So the changes of just 1 to 2 degrees in average temperature of the planet can cause potentially dangerous shifts in climate and weather. So this impact will differ depending on the magnitude of these changes, as well as the regional and socioeconomic differences in vulnerability. This simply shows that least developed countries, developing countries whose level of vulnerability is very high, and their adaptive capacities are very low, going to have the most going to suffer the impact the most. So here we are going to take a look at some of the solutions, okay, to climate change. So some of the solutions that we can really put into use to mitigate climate change could be retiring coal plants and keeping fossil fuels on the ground. Okay, and another one could be we can invest in clean and renewable energy. Another one could be we can switch to sustainable transportation, meaning harnessing electric transport, okay, promoting the use of public transport, promoting biking and walking. Another could be we can improve our agricultural practices. So those practices that will be less emitting, all right, that will emit less GHG, okay, and maybe some of we can try to use some of those crop that will be resistant, all right, to the impacts of climate change. This can help us to adapt to the impact of climate change and mitigate the impacts on agriculture. So another one could be we should halt deforestation and restore nature and degraded lands. And we should retrofit and decarbonize buildings as well as cement, steels, and plastics industry. It is understood that everyone, in particular those affected by climate change or the transition to a fossil fuel economy, must be properly informed about what is happening and is able to participate in decision making about their future. Every small step and actions can reverse the climate crisis. We must act now and together. So what are some of those opportunities that the climate crisis presents? So most of the time we see climate change as having negative impacts on our livelihood, having negative impacts on the work we do and everything that we are. We see climate change as being negative. But I've come to tell you today that with the appearance of man-made climate change, this has revealed some of the greatest and tremendous opportunities of the 21st century. All right, the climate change crisis now has opened windows to a whole generation of innovation, new businesses, new technologies, and educational opportunities. Okay, so the existence of man-made climate change has created new jobs. Like the energy transition could lead to about 20 million jobs every year. Okay, so climate change is not just seen from the negative point. We also see climate change as from the positive view by harnessing all of these opportunities. So another opportunity we could the climate crisis brought and could be that while replacing gasoline, diesel, and natural gas vehicles with electric vehicles, this will lead to a 50% reduction in emissions, all right, which is going to help I mean with the decrease in the proliferation of respiratory diseases due to less pollution, all right, because if we harness our electric power and start putting electric vehicles on the road, our pollution, our emission is going to be less, and we're going to have less deaths, less impact, less diseases originating from these from the impact of pollution. And then we're going to have also access to new markets in the development of new products and services. And also we're going to have opportunities to build resilience along the supply chain. So for the conclusion, I would say that the cost of saving the planet may be considered enormous, it may be considered huge, but the cost of blowing it up is even gigantic. It is a cost that the wealth and knowledge of the entire planet cannot afford. We are already in trouble. We cannot afford to wait any moment longer. We cannot afford to hope that climate change will go away, as the stability of our planet that we all depends on is broken. We must all act together and now, and we must leave no one behind. Thank you very much.